morning, I'm Maricar Bautista sitting in for Mikey Oreta. And you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The headlines: a global trade war averted for now, as U.S. President Donald Trump suspends the imposition of new tariffs against Canada and Mexico. The Department of Agriculture declares a food security emergency to address rising rice prices. And PAGCOR denies claims offshore gaming operations will reopen. First, let's take a look at how financial markets performed overnight. Major stock indices closed lower on Monday, but partly recovered from initial steeper losses. That's as U.S. President Donald Trump delayed tariffs on Mexico and Canada.
Markets have experienced a quick, sharp move down and a drift since this morning, and it should feel like deja vu. It's exactly where we were last week for totally different reasons. The tariffs that were introduced over the weekend really threw into the market persona of moving away from the election into more growth-oriented, the Fed easing, perhaps not as much in 2025, but down the road, to now more questions about what can we expect for inflation, what can we expect for growth, as this new wrench of this implementation of tariffs with three of our largest trading partners really starts to come through the system and the psyche of the investor here in the U.S.
The S&P 500 lost 0.76%, while the Nasdaq Composite was down 1.2%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.28%. Over in Europe, markets are also down. The UK's FTSE 100 lost 1%. Germany's DAX also down by nearly 1.5%, while France's CAC 40 lost 1.2%. U.S. President Donald Trump will postpone the imposition of tariffs on Canadian imports for at least 30 days. This was revealed by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in a social media post on Monday. Trudeau, who had a phone conversation with Trump, also said Canada had committed to creating the post of a special czar to combat the smuggling of fentanyl and would ensure permanent monitoring of the shared border. Trump responded with his own social media post, saying he's pleased with the latest development. President Trump has also paused new tariffs on Mexico for 1 month. This after Mexico agreed to reinforce its northern border with 10,000 National Guard members to address the smuggling of illegal drugs. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum spoke on the phone with Trump on Monday, just hours before U.S. tariffs on Mexico, China, and Canada were set to take effect.
They're going to send 10,000 border agents. The president's expressed his frustration with the flow of fentanyl and illegal migration. So that's a good step. So the president, I think, has extended it by another month. And I wasn't on the call, but my understanding it was a good call with President Sheinbaum. And, we want to have a good partnership with Mexico. They'll always be our neighbor.
The European Union wants a constructive dialogue with the United States, but it is ready to respond if it is unfairly targeted by the new Trump administration. That's according to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. European Union leaders gathered on Monday to discuss how to bolster the continent's defenses against Russia and how to handle President Trump's tariff threats.
The United States is our friend, our ally, and our partner. This is a relationship that has deep roots and will endure in time. Problems and difference of views can come up also between friends. When they do, we need to address them, to talk and to find solutions. Of course, while defending our values and upholding our principles and without compromising our own interests.
European countries also expressed support for Denmark after Trump bared plans to annex Greenland. The government reaffirms its commitment in fostering a competitive, inclusive, and sustainable business amid the World Bank's call to end red tape. Sujin Kim has more.
The World Bank is calling for urgent action to cut red tape. modernize digital infrastructure, and streamline regulations to boost economic competitiveness, warning without swift reforms, the Philippines will lose vital investments. The latest Business Ready or Be Ready report reveals that the Philippines is struggling with crippling inefficiencies in company registration, property transfer, and insolvency processes, placing it behind its ASEAN neighbors.
The main issue that it needs to improve on is the effectiveness of public services. The second is the efficiency with which these public services are deployed to provide better compliance of regulations.
Loiza warns that regulatory barriers have turned the country into a sleeping giant.
We welcome the Business Ready report because for us in business, it is a wake-up call. It is a wake-up call for businessmen. It is a wake-up call for policymakers.
So we are in full support of ARTA and the World Bank in terms of doing business. My own opinion, my personal opinion is that we have a more efficient government and system. I mean, say that we address the issue of regulatory management, then the issue of corruption will also be addressed.
The World Bank stresses that the Philippines needs a 5% per capita GDP growth rate to transition into an advanced economy. However, in the last decade, the country has only achieved 3.4%, well below target.
The key to escape this middle income trap and to actually accelerate growth is the private sector. The private sector is really an economic giant. It provides already 90% of jobs, 70% of output, 75% of investment, and 80% of government revenue.
Head of the Anti-Red Tape Authority, Ernesto Perez, reinforces that the whole of government is working to tackle the issues raised by the World Bank.
The Philippine government is committed to fostering a competitive, inclusive, and sustainable business.
Perez is also calling on private sector leaders to report inefficiencies to help validate and drive reforms.
We need the private sector support because the private sector is the one experiencing this red tape. And you are the ones that can validate the claims of government agencies in the regulatory.
Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Philippine factory activity expands at the slower pace of 52.3 in January. This is according to the latest Purchasing Managers Index, or PMI, of S&P Global. This is slower, or rather lower, than the 54.3 recorded in December. A PMI reading below 50 marks a contraction in the manufacturing sector, while 50 marks an expansion. S&P explains this is due to the weaker growth of output despite strong improvement in demand. The Department of Agriculture declares food security emergency due to the extraordinary increase in local rice prices. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel says the emergency declaration will help stabilize the market and protect consumers from further price hikes by allowing the release of rice buffer stocks from the National Food Authority. The food security emergency will be in effect until it is lifted or withdrawn, with a review scheduled every 4 months. A group of farmers expresses opposition to the declaration of the National Food Security Emergency, arguing it was meant to cover the inability of the National Food Authority, or NFA, to properly manage its rice stocks. For more on this, we're joined today by Raul Montemayor, National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers. Good morning to you, sir.
Yes, good morning, Maricar, and good morning also to all those listening to your program.
Mr. Montemayor, you asked the Department of Agriculture to fully study the legality of declaring food security emergency. Why do you think so, sir?
Yes, well, unang-una, we did not object to it, no? We were just saying that it should be carefully studied because the basis for declaring that emergency is a little bit dubious, no? In their press statement, they said there was a spike in prices in 2023. That was more than a year ago. And that is the basis for declaring the emergency now in 2025. So parang antagal na pala yung emergency, ngayon lang sila nag-declare. No? So what is now the formula that they adopted in coming to this conclusion? Because that formula will become the basis for declaring future emergencies. So in the future, can they again declare an emergency based on prices 2 years, 3 years ago? No? Yun ang medyo questionable dyan. Although we are not questioning their intent to bring down rice prices. I think it's about time that we did something about that. But again, the basis for declaring an emergency, which is the legal basis for unloading NFA stocks, yan ang medyo questionable. No? And the second thing, Maricar, is that we don't think they have exhausted all other efforts possible to bring down rice prices, aside from this emergency declaration.
Okay, but if it pushes through, how do you think the food security emergency will affect rice prices in the country?
Well, it might bring down prices if it's concentrated in several areas. We estimate, for example, that their target of releasing 30,000 tons per month in the Metro Manila market, that will cover about 25% of the Metro Manila market. So it might bring down prices in Metro Manila. We will have to see, no? Because ang problema lang, yung mga private traders, they cannot compete at the level of 38 because 38 is a subsidized price. No? Government will lose money at 38 pesos per kilo. So will it be able to bring down prices for the other retailers who cannot compete with that pricing? We have to see what happens. No?
Sir, so meron din kayo nakikita. You also see the downside, not only the upside, the downside also, if they do declare an emergency.
Yes, well, at 38, if the private sector decides to match NFA price, that means they will have to buy the palay from the farmers at about 19 pesos per kilo. And that is almost break-even price for farmers, for many farmers in the country. So they will lose a lot of incentive to produce. And what is ironic is that this rice problem, which is not the fault of the farmers, will eventually be, the burden of that will eventually be shouldered by farmers in terms of low prices for their palay.
Okay, sir. What are the things that the DA could have done to pull down rice prices instead of declaring a food emergency?
There is one glaring thing that they have not done. They have not run after the profiteers. And it's very clear that when they reduced the tariffs in July last year from 35% to 15%, the prices of rice should have gone down by 6 to 7 pesos per kilo kasi yun yung reduction in the tariff that importers have to pay. But the prices did not go down in the retail side. So that 7 pesos remained in the hands of importers, wholesalers, and maybe retailers. But up to now, since July last year, they have not pinpointed who is the one who took advantage. No?
Okay,
And
but
they are now trying to solve it by sort of inventing an emergency so that they will have the legal basis to release NFA rice, but they are letting these profiteers go scot-free.
But for now, are the rice prices going down already?
Yes, yes. And my estimate is even without the declaration, it will go down. I look at the international prices. No? It used to be about $600 per ton from Vietnam or Thailand. For the first time in January, it's below $400 per ton. So actually, hindi lang yung tariff reduction, but even the reduction in import costs. The prices today in the market should be much, much lower than what they are. But it's not happening because of the profiteering.
Okay, sir. So when do you see the next harvest season?
Well, it's almost about to start, and it will peak in March and April. No? And our fear now is if NFA starts unloading at 38 pesos per kilo, that will send signals to traders to buy palay from farmers at a low price. And then that will coincide with the inflow of very cheap imports because of the drop in international prices. So very bleak prospects for rice farmers in the coming months.
Okay, thank you for your time. Raul Montemayor, National Manager of the Federation of Free Farmers.
Salamat. Thank you very much.
Stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and narratives that matter most to your bottom line.
Every morning,
We won't mention
let's start your day right and laugh with fun. Join Paulo Del Rosario
So excited to bring it all here for you.
and Asis Carilo.
Always a pleasure sharing our mornings with you. Don't forget, wherever this day takes you, choose joy and spread kindness.
And Monique Tuzon.
Your mornings are mo fun with us. Join us in the next hour for stories and conversations that matter.
Only here on It's a Beautiful Day!
Magandang gabi, ako si Corina Sanchez Rojas.
Magandang gabi, ako po si Pinky Webb.
Simulan na natin ang agenda.
Nasa radyo na, mapapanood, mapapakinggan.
94.7 FM.
Nahaharap ngayon ang Estados Unidos sa isa na namang 4 na taong Trump presidency.
Let's squad rin yan. Binawi niya yung sinabi niya.
Ing masalimuot ang buwan ng Oktubre para sa ilang bilyonaryo. Sa bawat issue may anggulo at ang balita may agenda.
Here at home, trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened earlier. Let's look at the initial figures. The main index is trading at 59.89 from yesterday's close of 58.83. Among sub-indices, only financials is in the red, while mining and oil leading in the green at 3%. Gainers currently outpaced losers 85 to 33. Unchanged issues currently at 37. Value turnover is at 606 million. Meanwhile, at the foreign exchange market, the peso opened strong at 58.45 against the dollar from its close yesterday of 58.66. The Senate approved on third reading the bill expanding the franchise granted to Davao Light and Power Company, but a similar bill was vetoed by the President in 2022. Agatha Gregorio joins us on the line for details on this. Agatha?
Yes, Maricar, a bill to expand the franchise area of Davao Light and Power Company to parts of Davao del Norte and Davao de Oro was passed at the Senate. According to the Davao Consumer Movement, a number of organizations have already showed support, including the Tagum City Chamber of Commerce and the Samal Tourism Council. But in 2022, President Bongbong Marcos vetoed House Bill 10554, also on expanding DLPC's franchise area in Davao del Norte, due to, quote, its susceptibility to infringe on the franchise coverage area of the North Davao Electric Cooperative. The chief executive said then the cooperative has franchises which will subsist until 2028 and 2033. But groups have said the new bill is expected to improve services in Davao de Oro, adding that it will extend lower rates for Davao Light. Maricar?
Thanks for that update, Agatha Gregorio. Bilyonaryo's Enrique Razon and Jaime Augusto Zobel de Ayala buys back shares after last Friday's blue chip sell-off. Razon's firm International Container Terminal Services Incorporated, or ICTSI, scooped up 500,000 shares in Friday at prices ranging from 349 to 353 pesos, while Ayala Land Incorporated repurchases 6.6 million shares at 22 to 24 pesos. ICTSI and Ayala Land were among the hardest hit blue chip stocks, wiping out 2 billion pesos and 32.3 billion pesos respectively from their total value on January 31 alone. This is amid the rebalancing of the Philippine Stock Exchange, or PSEI, as foreign funds dumped shares. Despite the buyback, ICTSI shares remain down by almost 10% as of end January, while Ayala Land plunged to a 13-year low last Friday. The first 3 impeachment complaints filed against Vice President Sara Duterte will finally be submitted to House Speaker Martin Romualdez this week, 2 months after the initial complaint was lodged before the chamber. House Secretary General Reginald Velasco says that based on the House rules, the House Speaker will have 10 days to refer the complaint before the plenary. Another mode will be to refer the complaints before the Committee on Justice, or if a third of the House members will sign them, the complaints can be directly transmitted to the Senate to start the impeachment trial. Velasco, however, admits it's going to be a tedious process and trial may not be finished in 19th Congress.
I think we have given them enough time, so we will have to transmit the impeachment complaints within this week. Anytime, 1/3 of the members can endorse it, can sign a complaint in my presence, and then diretso yun sa Senate. Hindi na dadaan sa Committee on Justice.
The House and the Senate can accept a fourth impeachment complaint until Wednesday based on their calendar of business. The Philippine offshore gaming operators, or POGOs, are not coming back in the country. This is the assertion of Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation Chairperson Alejandro Tenco. This comes after they received information that some people are enticing investors to pay huge amounts for POGO licenses to be issued by PAGCOR. He assures the public POGOs will not reopen under the term of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and it will not entertain any new POGO applications. The Department of Health assures the public the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation has enough funds to pay for the health benefits for all Filipinos this year. It says there's a 10% increase in benefits for PhilHealth members this year based on the agency's 284 billion peso corporate operating budget since January 1st. Health Secretary Ted Herbosa explains the transfer of PhilHealth's excess, unused and idle funds to the National Treasury allow the corporation to maximize the use of its budget. The Department of Information and Communication Technology, or DICT, launches the Drone Medicine Delivery Program. With the help of Bilyonaryo Manny Panglinan's MWell and Philippine Flying Labs, the project aims to deliver essential medications during drones, or rather using drones, and connect patients in isolated communities with medical professionals via MWell telemedicine platforms. The program, which is part of DICT's Smart Villages and Smart Islands, or SBSI project, will serve as a model for similar initiatives nationwide for healthcare accessibility and equity for all Filipinos. A streamlined Mercedes-Benz raced by Stirling Moss and Juan Miguel Fangio has become the most expensive Formula One car sold at an auction. The sleek silver W196R was fetched at a Stuttgart auction for 51.16 million euros or $53 million. The buyer was said to have made the winning bid over the phone and chose to remain anonymous. The car is one of only 4 complete examples in existence. It was driven to victory by Fangio at the non-championship Buenos Aires Grand Prix in 1955.
I do think in our lifetime, none such car will be auctioned off. If I would be the owner, I wouldn't auction off because it has a race history. It was driven by the most important drivers, I would say, ever. Lewis, notwithstanding his glory, and it is the most beautiful race car ever built, and never ever will any formula allow you to build such a nice, wonderful, beautiful racing car. So that makes it extremely special. I think the engine is 8-cylinder engine and has around 295 horsepower and goes up to easily 300 kilometers an hour. As a streamliner with all the great aerodynamics, it was basically almost unbeatable in its time. Such a car is not just a car. It's not like our daily commute vehicle. It is a piece of culture, of testimonial for civilization. So it not just needs an owner, it needs a custodian.
It is the rarity of the car. There's only one car in the world available. All the rest is either, the other cars are either in museums or with Mercedes-Benz here in the collection. And this will be the only car available in my lifetime.
And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maricar Bautista. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.